Hello, I'm Chef Lemont, and over the next few weeks I'm going to be shooting a series of YouTube videos. Hopefully it's going to teach you a lot about doing some great cooking and some flavorful cooking. This videos would be cooking with roots. Roots is going to be one of the featured items in each one of the dishes we do, and hopefully you'll get to enjoy some good tasting Southern cuisine and understanding what the roots of what we're doing is going to be doing for us. Hello YouTube friends, I'm back again, Chef Lemont, with some new tips I want to give on some knife skills. We're going to improve all our dishes with a little bit more knowledge of what knife skills you know, going to help things to be a little bit more uniform, a little bit more nicer when your presentation comes. So what you want to do first is learn about your knives. You want to learn your safety tips about your knives. First off, this is a chef's knife. This is the most commonly used tool in the kitchen, especially in your commercial kitchens. The chef knife is a thin tip knife with a wide back end of it. The handle is a little sturdier. We went from wooden handles to more of your plastic or your Rubbermaid handles. But in order to get a good knife, no matter if it's a chef knife or whatever type of knife it is, and we'll go through some knives in just a few minutes, is you need to know the portions of the knives and how good a knife you want to get. You don't want to just buy a knife because it's going to be sharp. When you buy it new, it's going to be sharp. But can it stay sharp? Can you get another edge on it? Will it be able to be sharpened again? So, a few of these tips are going to help you with buying a great knife. First off, you want to know the parts of a knife. You need to know that this is the tip. Your tip of the knife needs to be good and sharp. This is your edge. This is your cutting edge. So it's the name of this portion of the knife is your edge. All along here is your edge. Across the back of it is called the spine. This is your knife spine. So you got the spine, the tip, and the edge. This portion right here is called a bolster. This is a protective area of the knife to keep this knife from slipping out of your hand or slipping backward on your hand. It's another portion that you can grasp hold to, that you can maneuver the knife a little bit better with being able to hold on to the bolster. Right behind the bolster is the handle of the knife. The handle of the knife should have no cracks in it, should be something sturdy, should be an easy enough grip for you to put your hand on it that it feels good. Right through the handle, you can see that this portion is called the tang. The tang of the knife is what you're going to really be looking at to make sure you get a good knife. The better your tang is, if it go all the way through the handle of the knife, you know the sturdier knife going to be, the more apt it's going to work for you all the time. So the tang of the knife is what you're always going to look for when you're buying a knife, to make sure that you got a knife that got a tang all the way through it. To hold the handle onto the tang is these little dark parts right here, and this is called rivets. So you got the tang, you got the handle, and you got rivets. This portion of this handle is called the butt. This is going to be the butt of your knife. So if you're looking at where you're going to have the hold onto the knife, you're going to grab your knife with these two fingers, your thumb and your pointing finger, around the back of your bolster. You grip it as such. The same way you hold the knife is the same way you'll carry it. You'll wrap these three fingers around the handle. Once you get around the handle, you're holding the knife. You should be having a grasp on the knife as such. Always know that if you got a good grasp on the knife, the more easier it is to work with and control the knife. If you got control of the knife, you will not cut yourself. More times out of none, you're holding the knife at the back of the handle with your finger up on top of it, and you got very little control of it. You can point it straight, but you can't control it once you start cutting anything that's hard. But if you got a good grasp of the knife, you can hold it. The same method is carrying the knife. You carry the knife down to the side, you hold it as such, and you point it down to the floor. The tip should be pointed to the floor in carrying the knife safely. Walking through the kitchen, doing anything else with it. Always think of safety. If something happens and you knock your knife off the table, if that knife is falling, just step back and let it drop. It's easier to replace a knife than it is to replace your toe or your finger. So you don't ever want to catch a knife that's falling, especially a sharp knife. I always say keep a good sharp knife, because a sharp knife, your cuts don't hurt as bad. A dull knife always hurts. Now this is a chef knife, and it's about 16 inches long. You may not be able to use a 16-inch long chef knife. You may be able to work with a smaller knife, and it's all right. I'm comfortable with a 16 or 14-inch knife. This is what I work with all the time. But you may want to work with a 12-inch. And it's a wide blade 12-inch knife, along with a 12-inch smaller knife. Most of you women, ladies, you still hold it the same way. You're going to have a spine on it. You're going to have a bolster to it, and you want to grab it around that bolster and the spine, holding it with these 3 fingers so that you can work with it. Now that we know the parts of the knife, we know how to get us a good knife, I'm going to tell you the type of knives you need. You don't need a lot of knives. If you can see these knives I got here on the table, these are all knives that's used in a commercial kitchen. But you may not need all of these knives. This knife here is a serrated edge knife. It's used for cutting breads and anything that's soft enough that you can cut through without mashing it. You got a serrated edge on it. This knife looked like a serrated edge knife, but it's smooth. This is called a carving knife. A carving knife is used for cutting meats, especially your large pieces of meat. This is a thin blade carving knife. It's used for cutting thinner slices of a big piece of meat, like a roast beef or a steamship round or a top round. This is what you call a scimitar. A scimitar is a knife used for cutting large pieces of meat, like prime rib that you want to get ribeye steaks off of, or a New York strip. You can cut those pieces, and you're going to make one slice on it and cut all the way through till you get to the curved end of the knife. This is a knife that's used in most of your meat foundries or your butcher shops. This is the real butcher's knife. It's got a thin tip on it, a wide portion of the front of the tip, and then it gets onto it like a scimitar is made, along with your bolsters and your handle that you can grip with it. So you can cut large pieces of roast or cut meat away from bones with this type of knife. Knowing what type of knife to use with what type of dish or what type of vegetable or fruit that you're using always going to help you. You don't want to be a plumber that's going to come to a job with a chainsaw. Nor would you take a screwdriver and be a carpenter and build your house with it. You want to use the right tool for the right task. You want to drive a nail with a hammer. You want to tighten up a pipe with a monkey wrench. You want to use the right knife to use to cut whatever you need, and you find out that you use a lot less effort and you have a lot less incident with using the right type of knife. Knives are some of my specialties, and I love to use knives, and I try to make sure that I got the right tool for the right task. You got knives like a knife to cut crinkles. So you got a crinkle cutting knife. You got a dough cutting knife. used for cutting dough. It's got a blunt edge on it so you can cut on hard surfaces without dulling the blade. You also got knives like the Chinese use. It's a Chinese cleaver. Short handle, wide blade, used for cutting, chopping. But they use this knife just like we use our chef's knives. This is called a Chinese cleaver. You also have bread knives or cheese knives that you can use for smaller breads and smaller pieces of cheese that you can cut with a serrated edge, and it's got a fork on the end of it. Use the correct knife for the task. This knife here is what we call a utility knife. It can be used for pretty much anything. You can use this knife for peeling potatoes, for cutting up small pieces of fruit, as much as, oh, I'm stretching out a little bit. This knife that looks like a utility knife, but it's got a thinner tip and a smaller spine, and the whole blade is a little smaller so it can flex. This is called a boning knife. And a boning knife is usually a shorter length knife, about 9 to 10 inches long, and it's got a real small blade width on it. But it cannot be confused with a filleting knife, which is a lot longer tip on it, and it does bend and flex the same way a boning knife. This knife is used for getting the muscle of a meat away from the bone, as closest to the bone as you can get it, and flexing around it so that you can get every piece of the flesh off of a bone. Along with that boning knife, we're gonna go with the next knife that you'll need. It's the paring knife. It's a little smaller knife. It's used for smaller tasks. It's used for working with small vegetables, or with taking out the core of something. Always using that smaller knife rather than trying to use a big knife to do those tasks that's going to usually cause some sort of accident. So a paring knife is the smallest knife in your arsenal. Then we go to, everybody know what this is. It's the meat cleaver. It's a thick, spined knife. It's well constructed. It's hard. It's got a wide bolster on it and a sturdy handle. And you use it to cut through large pieces of meat and bone at the same time. Because these kind of knives, it's almost like an axe, and it'll go straight through the bone or through a piece of meat. These are the type of knives that you can lose a full finger joint, because it'll cut straight through that bone. Keeping your knives at a good place and keeping them sharp is what you really want to do, because you can spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars for knives and get really good knives for hundreds of dollars, and they are do the same task as some of these knives that's not so expensive, as long as you keep your edges right. How we're going to keep our edges right? We're going to cut on a cutting board. Cutting boards are essential, and anytime you use a cutting board, you want to make sure that your cutting board has no cracks or dents in it that can hold bacteria. You want to make sure you put it on a surface that won't let it slide. So when you put it down, the board won't move on you, so that you're not cutting and the board sliding while you're cutting. You also want to have what we call a butcher steel. A butcher steel has a handle, has a knife guard on it. This piece of metal in it is a magnet as well as a sharpening tool. It's not made to sharpen a knife. It's only made to put an edge on the knife. Your edge, you can lose an edge by just using a knife regular, especially with acids and that kind of thing, like tomatoes, pineapples, stuff that's got a lot of acidity to it, can start taking your edge off of your knife, and you can use your butcher steel to put the edge back on the knife. You can put your edge on the knife, keeping your knife at 20 degrees and cutting from the tip, from the bolster down to the tip, down to the tip. Us old chefs, we use it because we got a hand guard on it, and we use it at a 20-degree angle. As long as you're keeping it at a 20-degree angle and coming from the bolster to the tip, you can get a good edge. I showed you some other knives that I got here, and they are more eating knives and utensil knives. You got the vegetable peeler. The vegetable peeler is a knife. It has a blade on it. It is an edge on it. So you got vegetable peelers, and they come in all types of shapes and sizes. You have a steak knife. It's one of your eating utensil knives. This knife is used only for plating. We don't work with this knife at our cutting boards. We use this knife working on the plate. This is a butter knife or a case knife. The butter knife is used for just that. You can put butter on breads and biscuits and stuff. This is not a knife that you use to cook with. So if you use the right utensil for the right task, then you're more apt to be safe with it. I have one other thing that I want to tell you. If you're buying knives, they often ask me, Chef Lemont, what knives do I need to buy when I go and buy knives? I see all these pretty sets at the stores, and how do I know which knife I want to buy? Go back to what the original rule. Make sure you got a knife with a tang that goes all the way through the handle. Make sure you got a knife that's going to hold an edge. Most of your stainless steel knives will hold an edge. You don't want to get a carbon-based knife. The old knives that we used to keep will hold the edge all the way to the spine. But they're carbon-based, they'll rust on you. Rust causes a bacteria that can be toxic. So we want to stay away from carbon-based knives. The knives I'm telling you that you're probably going to need are 4 types of knives. These 4 knives are your paring knife, your boning knife, a serrated edge knife used for breads, cheeses, with a nice little fork on the end of it if you're doing cheeses, and your chef's knife. These only 4 knives you really need in a full kitchen if you're going to do this type of work. These knives right here can even get you through any portion of commercial kitchens that you want to get into. So if you're going to culinary school or you're just going to work in a commercial kitchen, these 4 knives can get you through. One other knife I didn't tell you about, and it's the Santoki. This is like the chef knife, the French chef knife that we use in America. This has been one of the premier knives that came out in the last century or two that everybody has been going to, and it works a lot better, and it's one of my knives that I'm really partial to, is because I can use this knife on a various number of tasks. Now these knives I got here, these are a little more expensive than some of the knives you see here, but you don't have to have this expensive knife to do a good job. A lot of times we carry tools in a bag when we're doing commercial work, and you want to have all the tools that you can work with so that you'll know what you got that you need to work with. And just like anybody else, it's when you're going on a job, you're a plumber or a carpenter, you want to have your own tools. You seem to do better with a tool that you're comfortable with, that you have worked with before. I like some tools that I've worked with for different tasks. So if you're going to do multiple jobs away from one kitchen, it's good to have your carry bag. And carry bags come in all sorts of looks. Now I carry these tools. These are my competition tools, so I use these, and they're a little bit more expensive. It don't matter how expensive a knife is, it matters how well the cook is. So your first objective is to be able to come up with great taste and flavors. So we'll get to that later in these YouTube videos, but I wanted you to understand what kind of tools you're going to work with to get to the proper product that you're trying to come up with. I think you'll find all of these tools to be very helpful when you get into your cooking task.